So, welcome back to episode 2 of this Let's Build basically a modern PC. Last time we finished the mainboard assembly, as you can see here. So we installed the CPU, the RAM sticks and the SSD. We had to do a short break here. First because it makes a little bit of sense to make a break here. And second of all, because this little stud here for screwing the cooler, the water cooling loop in, didn't really want to cooperate. So I had to figure out how to get it in. But yeah, after a little bit of trial and error, I managed to get it in. So with that out of the way, we can finally continue with actually, well, putting everything together into one case. So I guess let's get the oops, sorry to knock you over here. Let's get this one out of the way. We don't need the instructions here. We will need the screwdriver. But first, let's get here our case in view. In this case, as I have already explained, this is the NZXT H510, and it features this nice tempered glass panel here. There's a little bit of stuff inside, which we'll need to remove first. So let's get the screw out here. Come on. Okay. We really need to be careful with this stuff because it easily breaks. So let's get it far away from where it can get damaged. So here, a small accessory box. Some zip ties and a booklet or user manual in this case. I think this is all that we need from here for the time being. Let's look in the manual. By the way, this is very important. Look into the manual. Especially if you're doing this the first time, look into the manual to see where basically everything has to go and what you have to do. First things first, our mainboard goes here. Goes in here. There are two options for mounting our graphics card, which is either this way or here at the front. I'm not really into showing off the graphics card, so we are going to mount it pretty much the normal way. So this one isn't relevant for us. Normally everything should already be ready to assemble. Yes, looks like it. Okay. So let's remove the backplate. Which lifts out of the way. Okay. So now we have full access to all the things in here, which is Great. We can remove this. The cable ties we will replace later, so we can remove these as well. Okay. We're going to replace them with proper cable ties and not these twisty things here. Let's get this out. Okay, these are for the fans. We will need to, well, basically change one fan out because I want to place the water cooling loop this way up so that the radiator is mounted on the top. This has two benefits. One benefit is we can blow out the warm air from the top and we won't blow it into the case, which would, well, not be great for other components. And second of all, it's going to help us with basically getting rid of noises from bubbles inside the loop, inside the water loop. Even AIO coolers like this one have a little bit of air in them, and it's a little bit noisy if it gets stuck in the pump, and it's not that much noise if it gets stuck in the radiator. It's a little bit, well, it's going to be a little bit bad for the performance, but a lot less bad than if it gets stuck in the water pump. So we'll do that. So let's inspect this one. Everything looks the way it's supposed to be. This looks good. Now let's place the motherboard inside. I think the best way for you to see everything would be something like this. Okay, yes, that should work. These things can get out of the way. Okay, everything out of the way that isn't necessary. Water cooling is going to be needed later on, so let's place it here. And let's install the backplate covering this one. Again, it's not absolutely necessary, and sometimes if you bought a used motherboard, you may not get it anymore, but it's going to help with preventing unnecessary airflow out of the case or inside the case, and it looks a lot better. Okay, that's in there. It only clicks in there, so you don't have to screw anything. Just place it here on the side where the motherboard is going to end up. You can only stick it in one way because the motherboard only goes in one way as well. So let's get a motherboard. Let's make a test fit here. Okay. Okay, looks good. But some of the, no, are they all in there? We test something. Okay, that looks good. That looks good as well. That should work. Perfect. Okay, we can screw it in place. So let's get the screws out here. Okay. We don't need standoffs. Flat screws, hexagon screws. big fan screws and M3 screws, okay. This is all good. User manual says, well, it doesn't specify which screws to use for the motherboard. I believe it does not say anything about that. Standoff hex screws. Motherboard installation, standoff wrench. Die 6-Kantschrauben A sind für unser Netzteil. Okay, dann gehen die dahin. Und Motherboard Installation sind E oder F. Wow, E oder F ist gut. Beziehungsweise B, also 6 mal 32, das sind dann die hier. Okay. These, okay. This one. It's important to use the right screws here because if they are too long or have the wrong thread on them, you may damage the case or your motherboard. I'm gonna need a bigger Phillips head here. Okay, 3 in, doesn't more to go. Okay. While screwing in the mainboard, make sure that you aren't going crazy in terms of how much force you apply to the screws. They should be snug but not compressing the mainboard. So please don't go crazy with them or you may damage it. Normally the mainboard isn't really going to get damaged by screws because there aren't any traces around the holes, but yeah, well, don't try it. And also make sure that you aren't damaging any of the surface mount components here, because they are probably very important. Almost definitely they are important. Okay. perfect. So the next thing is going to be the graphics card. I'm doing the graphics card next because I want to see how everything is going to fit in there before installing the water cooling. Okay. See. Okay, we need slot 2 and 3. For graphics card there are pretty much 3 different types in terms of what the size is. There is the 1 slot type, which is relatively small. There's the dual slot type, which this graphics card is. And there's the rare one, which is 2.5 or 3 slot cards. Depending on the amount of slots it needs, you need to remove the covers here. In some cases this means that you may also lose some of the space in here for additional cards. But in this case we aren't even going to lose a single slot, a single PCI slot here. So. This one needs to be removed. Okay, we need to remove this one here as well. I guess I'm gonna use the faster method for this one. Okay. Now some ear candy or eye candy. Depending. No, it's not perfect. Sorry. Okay. When placing it in, make sure that it goes in without any pressure. Don't force it. And there's a small ledge here on some motherboards. Some don't have it, some have it, which you may need to push up or push down before installing. If you want to uninstall this graphics card, you may need to push this back to allow the graphics card to come out. In our case, the case sorry, also had this small plate here, which needs to be removed to access the slots here. And now we need to reinstall it. Okay. Okay, that looks good. Yeah, the graphics card isn't going to go anywhere. Okay, so the next step is going to be getting out that stuff here out of the way. Don't need this. This one necessary either. Okay. So now we have to figure out where to mount the water cooling. Unfortunately, I think the plan that I had in mind for this one isn't going to work. Because we have enough space here at the top. Wait a sec, I will move it around so you can see it. Here at the top, where I wanted to install it, we probably don't have enough space for the radiator and a fan. And unfortunately, I can't mount the fan outside of the case because, well, it's not going to look great. But we have two options now. We can install it at the front, which has the disadvantage of blowing hot air into the case, or here at the back. I'm going to figure out whether I can install it here at the back, because again I want to blow out hot air out of the case and not into the case. Okay, so for that we need to remove the fan here. Let's get our screwdriver here. Okay, still hooked in here. Okay. Okay, so let's see whether this is going to fit there. Gets tight, but it should work out. Go around here. Yep, that should work. Barely, but it should work. Okay, perfect. So we get lucky there, and we can actually mount it at least this way, the backup way. So let's do that. First we need to mount the fan to the radiator, and then we can mount the radiator into the case, and then we can finally mount our water cooling block to the CPU. Or perhaps we are going to save the last part for that. It makes the cable management easier. Sorry, small change of plans here. Let's install the water cooling right away and save the fan for last. Okay, let's make sure which screws it use. Okay. a little bit space here. Move all of that here. Let it cruise out here. Okay. And let's start installing this one. This is going to be a little bit difficult for me doing it on the camera, but we're gonna make it work somehow. This way. Yes, that should be best for viewing. Okay. Okay. Another one. Okay, radiator mounted successfully. So now let's mount our water plug to the CPU, and the last step is going to be mounting the fan to the radiator. By the way, it's important to use the screws supplied by the radiator or appropriated screws, because otherwise you may damage the radiator and it may start to leak, which, well, is not something you want. First thing is going to be to clean the CPU. For this I'm using isopropanol. In general you can use anything that cleans off dust and well, gunk and stuff, but it needs to be something that is going to evaporate pretty quickly. I'm also going to be removing the heat pad here. Which is a little bit stuck, because I want to use my own now finally gets loose. Okay. Perfect. That's something you're going to need to do from time to time anyways, because the thermal paste is going to dry out after some time. And when it does that, it will stop conducting heat as well as it used to, which will increase the temperatures of your CPU basically. So let's get here. Thermal paste. In terms of how much you need, it depends on the CPU. If you are going to apply thermal paste to just the die of the CPU, so not the aluminum block, you need pretty much nothing. To these normal sized CPUs like this one, something of around the size of a pea would be okay. That should be good. Make sure you don't spread it onto the components of the motherboard. There are larger CPUs like the Ryzen or the Threadripper, sorry, which needs a lot, really a lot of the paste. But in this case, we only need a pea-sized amount. Some say don't spread it around, some say spread it around. I like to spread it around, mostly because I can ensure that everything is covered. Oh, my finger soaked up everything. Well, that is not that great, so we need a little bit more. Okay. Looks good. Everything's covered. Make sure that when you are spreading it out, that you aren't going to use way too much, because it will get squished out, and yeah, well, that's not really good. So it should be a thin layer, evenly spread across the entire CPU. It should normally get squished out, whatever is too much, but you want to minimize that squishing. Okay. Okay. I think this is not the right size for this one. Okay, that should be this. Okay, yeah, this is the right one. Okay. So all these. When you are starting out after placing the water block down, or for that matter any cooler, you should start by only lightly threading the screws in place. In this case it's a little bit on the side, so we squish it down. Okay. Okay. Looks good. Don't use electronic tools for this step, because you may damage the CPU. In terms of how to the way you want to basically screw it down is you go into a cross type, well, something like this here. This one needs to move a little bit. This one. Okay. 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 Don't go crazy on this one as well, because again you may damage the CPU. So do it by hand, slowly, in a crisscross pattern, like I did, and then you should be all okay. And only as much as a little bit, so not even hand tight, just enough to make sure that it is actually properly seated, this water block, and that everything makes a nice connection. And I think this is everything for that. So let's mount the fan. For mounting the fan, there is always a direction the fan is going to blow, which normally should be written on the fan. There should be a symbol, but in this case there is none, but I know that it goes in right this way. And for cable management purpose, we are going to thread this cable through already. We need the long screws here. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Okay, everything is nice and tight in there. And thread this one through as well. Okay. And the last part for today is going to be the installing the power supply here at the bottom. For that we need to move it around like this. and get the power supply. So, and let's mount it like this. This sticker needs to be removed. Okay. Okay. So our screws for mounting the power supply are here. Conveniently packaged in this packet that is not going to really open. Okay. And how do we do this? Okay. 1, 2, 3, and the last one. Okay, so that concludes the assembly. At least in terms of parts to install. The next episode is going to be cable management. So we are going to wire up all of these cables. The cables here coming from the power supply, and hopefully do this as neatly as possible. So I guess we'll see how this turns out in the next episode, and yeah, let's give you our last look inside. We have installed the graphics card, the motherboard and the water cooling. next episode is going to be, again, all of the cables. If you have a hard drive, you may need to install this right now. In this case, it mounts right here, which can only access from the back, but we only have an SSD for the time. So that's that. So then, until the next episode.